What famous monster and popular character class have their first appearance in the Strategic Review number 2? We're going to answer those questions and a whole lot more on today's video. Please stick around. I'm AZ Mountaineer, and this is our channel, Old School Rules, where we celebrate the community of old school gamers and grognards who like classic RPGs, miniatures, magazines, and everything that goes with it. Today we're taking a look at the second strategic review that was put out by TSR. This is from the summer of 1975. Hope you enjoyed the video. Today we're continuing our Magazine Monday series where we take a look at periodicals from the early days of the RPG hobby. This is the strategic review. This is issue number 2. It's coming out on a quarterly basis, so this is the second one from the summer. This is 11.5 by 17 paper folded in half. We're up to 8 pages now, and so it's actually bound together basically with glue. No staples are used here. On my copy, somebody put some holes in it. But that's just a very simple, so they sort of call it still a newsletter, but it's the precursor to the Dragon. That's why I'm featuring it here on my sort of Magazine Monday series. It's the front page. Last time it was printed with sort of a green ink. Now this is just sort of a grayscale and black and white version. In terms of what's inside, there's an editorial, some more information for the Strategists Club, an article for rules corrections and additions for Cavaliers and Roundheads, wargaming information, answers to frequently asked questions for D&D, the creature feature, that's the new monster, Rangers, which is the new character class. They've combined their articles that they call the Armory and Castles and Crusades into one article that talks about polearms, some news about what's going on with the company, and some rules for Panzer warfare. Again, the only people named here in terms of editors and contributors are Gary Gygax and Brian Blume. So here's the first page, and the first thing we want to talk about here is the in memoriam. Gary's childhood friend, dear friend, and partner in the company, Donald K., has passed away, and so they've got that note in here. They wanted to just point that out and make a special mention of him. The next thing we have is an article for the Strategists Club, or Strategists Club, and last time they asked you for nominations, and they basically are saying we want more because we have bigger circulation now. So again, asking people to make these nominations or votes, if you will, and they're going to have an awards ceremony at the Gargoyle Restaurant before Gen Con 8 that year. And again, they're looking for best new game, outstanding designer, writer, magazine, best miniature figure, and favorite swords and sorcery novel. Those are the categories. And the other thing they want to know is what people are interested in terms of miniature wargaming rules. And they've got several things here they're asking their club members to rank: Ancient Rules, Wild West, Napoleonic, more D&D supplements, Star Probe, it's a sci-fi game they put out, editions, Medieval Rules for the Crusades, for Arthurian Legends, for Robin Hood, the American Civil War, American Revolutionary War, Napoleonic war game rules for super large battles, Colonial Wars, World War I, Fighting the Skies, a fantasy board game, which eventually I think will be Dungeon, Dave McGarry's game, a battle game similar to those offered by Avalon Hill and SPI, a Dippy variant with rules and full-size maps, or something you want to make up for yourself. Okay. Next, we've got an article here from Brian Blume. It says, TSR, Why We Do What We Do. And it's interesting, I think, for historical purposes, and I always think these kind of early essays are interesting to read. So they say, TSR is not a giant company, it's not even a large company, but we're growing, and they want you to know this is a company of gamers who found that they really enjoy creating and publishing games or rules for other gamers, and I think that's a really important thing to focus on and for people to realize that they think is unique about their company. And certainly in the history of TSR, what we see is that when these early participants who were all gamers or pretty much all gamers leave, it certainly does change, I think, in some ways the feel of the company. And again, they want you to know they're focusing on bringing you the kind of games that you want. That's what the survey is for, to tell you what other kind of things you might be interested in getting. And they take great pains to say, whatever TSR does is meaningless without your support. We know we are providing what you, our fellow hobbyists, really like and want. Sales tells us we're doing a pretty good job, and we want to continue to do that. And then again, he points out the survey and tells you that's going to be important to give them ideas about where to go in the future. Okay. In a nutshell, we do not believe that we can ever work too closely with our fellow wargamers. And note they say wargamers, not role players or anything else, because they still think of, in these early days, even with Dungeons and Dragons, it's really a game being played by wargamers, and that's just the way they thought about it. We can never work too closely with our fellow wargamers, for TSR's sole justification for existence is to provide you the products which you desire. So, very nice sentiment there in the early days. Next, we have some rules, clarifications, and amendments for Cavaliers and Roundheads. As they point out, the people playing these games sort of have come to understand some of the stuff that's maybe not clear, so they've got some ideas in here for movement, what you can do in terms of different weapons, what type of actions you can take in your turn in terms of moving, loading, firing, and stuff like that, the effects of terrain, some things, comments about melee combat, morale, and things that would give you bonuses on your rolls. In the wargaming world, the big thing they say is it's convention season. And they say if you look around in local newsletters or fanzines, you're going to find all kinds of different conventions. They want to point out what they consider to be the really big ones, which are, no surprise, Gen Con 8 and also Origins 1. This is back when those two folks got along, and maybe the last time they got along. They become very competitive about who's got the better convention, who's got the higher attendance, and those kind of things. And that goes on for a number of years. But at this point, they're still friends, and they've got an advertisement for them in here as well. A little bit of information around the wargaming world. He says Conflict magazine is getting ready to put out an issue. Two magazines have folded, Battle, Flag, and El Conquistador. Signal from Canada is a new zine that covers games and conventions. Midwest Gaming Review is being put out from the Midwest, no surprise. Flying Buffalo is going to put out a newsletter called Wargamers Information. And then you remember the guy who was doing the sort of swords and sorcery Midgard things, and he's got a zine called Belron Rumor Monger. And also there's some people who are doing play-by-mail Midgard. He said he thinks their games are full, but you can always write and try and get on their list. And then there's another thing called Bleak December, which he says will list books on hobbits, sword and sorcery, horror, fanzines, rules, and other things like that. And then finally, Fantastic Stories, which I think is putting out fiction. He puts a plug in there for that one. So here we have Gary Gygax's FAQ, the frequently asked questions about D&D rules. He wants to, again, give some clarification, some information so that everybody sort of knows what the official rules are supposed to be, or what the intent was. They're not quite into like what the official rules are quite yet, right? Talks a little bit about combat and says, the chainmail rules really aren't designed, in his view, for one-on-one combat. He said he would use the rules from D&D for that, but you can still use chainmail for larger group combat and things like that. He gives an example of combat, and so he's got this little thing. He does a narration for a hero who stumbles upon 10 orcs, and they roll for surprise, and he is surprised, but the orcs are far away, and so they use their surprise to get in close with him and engage in melee combat. It's interesting here, when he rolls his d6, highest number goes first, he gives the dexterity modifier adjustment to the human fighting man, and actually says that orcs maybe would have a negative because they have low dexterity. He said that's optional. So that's interesting that they're getting an initiative bonus, right? But so the orcs attack him, and they're basically trying to overbear him, to grab him and pull him to the ground because he's a hero, so he's vastly superior. Somehow they can sense that. And so they make their attack rolls. 2 of them hit, and what he says is basically if they get a hit, they're going to be deemed to have gotten a hold of him. Now, there's 10 orcs, but only 5, he said, can basically surround a person at a time, so that only 5 get to make a dice roll. So basically, once they get a hit, the way he's going to resolve this grappling attempt is they get to roll 2 dice, the hero gets to roll 4 dice, and if they are better than him, then he's going to be pinned down, sort of helpless. But if he exceeds them with his 4 dice roll, which is obviously easier for him to do, then he resists their attempt to get a hold of him. In his example, the hero is successful, and he says that they are stunned. Both of the orcs are stunned when he knocks them away. He rolls. Now he gains initiative. He hits the orcs. He does some damage, kills one of them. The other one is still alive, and so on. He goes through that. So that's, I think, interesting, and it's always helpful to have someone sort of walk you through combat, exactly what's rolled and so forth. And I think that was smart of him to give a good example of that. Talks about morale and says, that the players don't really need to do that. They get to make their own decisions. In his world, unintelligent monsters always just fight to the death. Intelligent monsters maybe can decide to run away, or you maybe have to check for morale to see whether the lesser ones will break and flee. In terms of experience points, he says you shouldn't give a lot of experience points for magical items because you get the benefit of the magical items to gain more experience points going forward. That said, for example, he's still giving you 100 experience points for a single arrow and 1,000 experience points for gaining a magical sword and so forth. But as he points out, treasure's where it's at, right? 1 experience point for every gold piece you bring up out of the dungeon. It really is a treasure haul campaign in the early days. And then finally, a little explanation about what I call Vancian magic. How do spells work, right? And he says, you've got it memorized. You can use it once. And the incantation that you've memorized will just sort of just be erased from your mind. So he's making it really clear. Obviously, didn't do spell points. And this is what we call the Vancian system. You memorize it, you use it, and you've forgotten it. And now you've got to stop, rest, study to do it again. As he points out, you can overcome that limitation to some extent. So here he's got a mid-level magic user. He said you could memorize sleep spell 3 times. You could take all 3 spells would be sleep. You can bring scrolls, which just like the memorization, when you read a scroll to cast the spell, then the runes just disappear from the page and are gone forever. So it's a one-time use kind of item. But he says, you could come in with scrolls and memorize, and you could end up with maybe 5, 6 different castings of those spells based on what you're able to memorize at your level and all the scrolls you might bring with you. I think it was much more common for magic users to come in carrying scrolls so that they could cast more than 1 spell in a particular adventure. Okay, new monster. One of my favorites, this is the Roper. There's just some random art at the top. It's not attributed. I really think maybe that's Dave Arneson's drawing, but somebody who knows better will have to tell me in the comments if they know whose art that is up there at the top. So here is our new creature feature monster for D&D, the Roper. This monster appears to be a mass of foul, festering corruption. A cigar-shaped, 9 foot long with a diameter of 3 feet. It can stand upright to look like a pillar or stalagmite, or flatten itself out on the floor to look like nothing more than a hump. It has 6 strands of strong, sticky, rope-like excretion. It can shoot from 2 to 5 inches away, so 20 to 50 feet. And a hit will cause weakness, 50% loss of strength in 1 to 3 turns, and the Roper will draw the prey into the toothy maw, where the person will be quickly devoured. Your chance to break a strand is the same as for opening a door. Every turn, the rope drags the victim 10 feet closer to its mouth. This yellowish-gray beast is unaffected by lightning, takes half damage at most from cold, but is very susceptible to fire, -4 on saving throws. It has 10 to 12 hit dice, armor class of 0, and his bite does 5 to 20 points of damage. And on that loss of strength, you do get a save versus poison, 80% magic resistance, and immune to charm. All right, there's the Roper. Really cool. No image yet. The image will come later. I think it appears in Greyhawk, if I'm not mistaken, which book is the supplement is coming out about the same time. They mention later. Okay, and now here's our new character class. This is the Ranger, and this is by a guy named Joe Fisher. I guess I should have put him up in the contributors section. Joe Fisher's Ranger, a new subclass of fighting men, much like paladins. They must, and this, remember, now we only have lawful, neutral, and evil. We don't have good and lawful, neutral, and chaotic. We don't have good and evil yet. You have to be lawful. If you're not, you'll lose your benefits. Strength prime requisite. You need 12 in your intelligence and wisdom and 15 in your constitution. Again, 2 hit dice at first level, just like we're used to. And then, they start getting cleric spells at 9th level. A cleric spell, then a magic user spell, then 2nd level cleric spells, then 2nd level magic user spells, 3rd level cleric, 3rd level magic user. They do the standard limitations. They can only own what they carry. They cannot hire any men at arms, and so you can only have 2 rangers in a group together. They get no bonus for prime requisite, but they basically get 4 experience points for every 3 earned, which is, if my math is right, a 30% XP bonus, which is actually better than what anybody gets for their prime requisite anyway. And they can track, and this is the bane of some DM's existence, is this tracking ability, because here he is in a dungeon going down a passage through a door, trap doors, chimneys, secret doors. They have a base 65% down to 30% for the secret doors going through, but it's pretty good tracking ability. As long as he's observed the creature and it hasn't been more than 6 turns since they left the area. Outdoors, 90% chance, at 10% reduced for every day. Surprised only on a 1. Special advantage fighting monsters of what they call the giant class, which is interesting because we saw this before somewhere. Kobolds to giants. So I don't know what they really mean by the giant class. It's not just giants. For every level they gain, they add +1 to their damage die against these creatures. +1 first level, +2 second level, etc. And then at 8th level, they get more abilities. They get the automatic 2 to 24 followers will come and join them, and when they get to 9th level, they can use magic items that'll heal or cure disease, including scrolls. And then at, I think it's 10th level, they can employ devices that deal with clairvoyance, ESP, telepathy, telekinesis, etc. But when they get to 8th level, they lose that experience point bonus. And if they lose followers, they'll never be replaced. So it's a one-time sort of your reputation, draw these people in. And then they've got the table here to roll to see what kind of followers you're going to have. So that's it for the original version of the Ranger. Now we're going to look at Gary. He loves all this old-time stuff, and he's going to talk to you here about pole arms. What are they? And he talks a little bit about, the difference between those and spears. These are obviously on a much longer pole. And then there's, all these different types, and he gives you these drawings so you can see what is mounted on the pole, essentially, is what makes it different type of pole arm. He describes each of them, how they might be used, special things that you might use with them, whether they're stabbing or cutting, swinging, things, hooking type of device, etc. One of the things about this, he explains each of them, but no really special abilities. They just have different to hit against different types of armor and damage, of course, but nothing special. And I say that because the Ransor, I believe, is the one in AD&D that you can actually use and try and disarm your opponent. So it's a pretty nifty special ability. He mentions that here, that those hooked curves on the Ransor were used to try and catch weapons, but he doesn't actually explain that that's something you can try to do. And then he's got this chart where you have the pole arms going down the left and the type of armor here and the different modifications you would get in terms of your attempt to hit for that. So now we have TSR news. What's going on with TSR? It says things here are going by very quickly. Lots happened in a month. We've got some discounts on 3 titles: Chainmail, Panzer Warfare, and Greyhawk, the new D&D supplement. And he says we have had an unexpected surge of income that allowed us to rush ahead with production of all of these different booklets, and we didn't want to keep you waiting. He tells you they've got something new coming out. Even though they ask about it in the survey, the Wild West game is actually already in production, and Boot Hill, as it's named, will soon be coming out to you to play. Gary's got his classic warfare miniature rules available as well. And let's see, he mentions that there's articles in the Wargamers Digest that were written by Gary Gygax to give you some idea of what's coming here in the near future. They're thinking about a new edition of Fight in the Skies as well. And he said there may be an increase in price for the dice that they're selling. And so, because they're not really making any money on that, I suppose. He talks a little bit about the price of Panzer Warfare, 28 pages for $4. And then you have Cavaliers and Roundheads, which is 36 pages, but only $3. And he says basically it's printing costs that have gone up since then. So it is what it is, I suppose. And then finally, here are some additional information that you could use for Panzer Warfare. And this article is by Brian Blume. Here's a look at a little bit of the art. There's not very much. We have the little monsters that are there above the creature feature, again, just to show it to you a little closer. And then this little comic, one frog says to the other, "No, Fred, I think he was a 14th level wizard." So apparently they've been turned into frogs. And then we have the advertisements. We've got Origins 1, which again I think is significant because at this point the companies are getting along well enough that they're willing to cross-promote. And then here's the coupon, for being part of the Strategists Club. Here's the advertisement for their own convention, Gen Con 8. Big day, it says, 3 days, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And of course, this just mentions things about that. You had to read the article to know about the special banquet at the Gargoyle, which is the night before just for people who are part of the Strategists Club. And then I wanted you to know the next issue, where it's quarterly, the fall copy will be the Monster issue, with information about adventures on Barsoom, Warriors of Mars, recreating a deserted Martian city, organizations for Panzer Warfare, and a Napoleonic battle report, and more. Then they've got this note here for their special edition. They can get War of Wizards. This is the pre-publication offer. Very limited number author-produced copies of this, only for subscribers to the Strategic Review at a special price. And then, of course, that's going to be released as a game. It was a game that came in a Ziploc bag, if I'm not mistaken about that one. And here's what they've got for sale direct to you from TSR. Their games that we've mentioned before, dice, miniature figurines from Scrubby Miniatures, and more on the way, they promise. So that's our look at the Strategic Review number 2. All kinds of good stuff in there. Fun stuff if you like history with the new character class, the new monster that we all, are both iconic parts of the game going forward. And just interesting historical notes to see as TSR is really beginning to become a much more professional organization. They finally got that money to do some of the things they want to do, to pay people and to get organized and focus on this full time. So it's exciting to sort of see these very early days of TSR. I hope you all enjoyed today's video. I hope you're enjoying our new series and our ongoing series that we've had over time, and I hope that you're subscribed. If you've got friends, please send them our way. We're always looking to add more people to our YouTube community here. And until next time, my friends, keep rolling 20s.